Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am just another tinfoil hat. Welcome to my show. Today we're going to be dealing with yet another really classic, very high strangeness cryptid encounter. That of the Roachdale, Indiana creature. Now, this case actually occurred the exact same year as the Missouri Monster case, and there are a lot of parallels that can definitely be drawn between the two, though Momo is definitely quite a bit more well known. And I think that this has everything to do with the lack of a spiffy nickname. The Roachdale Creature, the Roachdale Monster, the bizarre Roachdale translucent thing. Ro-Ro, for the creature observed in Roachdale. The account begins on an evening in early August of 1972 in the farmland surrounding Roachdale, Indiana. The brother of one of the main witnesses was staying at a farmhouse and saw this luminous object hovering over a neighboring cornfield. Apparently this object kind of hovered there and then exploded. The man was shaken. He said that he thought a plane had blown up. However, the explosion of whatever it was left absolutely no trace. As we'll see in a minute, maybe it did leave something else. About an hour and a half later, his sister, Lou Rogers, was outside with her young son, Keith. They had just stepped out of the farmhouse that she and her husband, Randy, were then renting at the time, to roll up the windows on the family car. At this point, it was already getting dark and it was starting to rain, when she and her son heard this bizarre growling type noise, which they described as a boo or ooh type noise. She thought nothing of it, though she did state later that it sounded like it came from a human rather than some sort of creature, which would definitely unnerve me. I don't know about you guys. However, Keith began freaking out, and it was at this point that Lou felt someone breathing down her neck. She turned around to confront whoever it was, and nobody was there. It was at this point, like any sensible or reasonable person would do, they ran inside. However, this was simply the beginning of a fiasco in which this Bigfoot-like creature would paradoxically leave far less and far more than footprints. The Rogers house began being plagued by odd noises, like someone pounding on the siding and windows, which got progressively louder each night. And oddly enough, the beast also kept really good time. Lou Rogers said the noises always started up between the hours of 10 and 11:30. Besides this nightly percussive performance, the creature also emanated a rotten flesh or garbage type stench, which of course is very common across Sasquatch encounters, and also very common across poltergeist encounters, and this was pointed out by John Keel in The Complete Guide to Mysterious Beings. Now Randy, her husband, concerned for his family's safety, went so far as to borrow his father's shotgun. Whenever the noises started up each night, he would rush out there to confront whoever or whatever it was that was disrupting his family's peace. And though he apparently never shot the beast, he did see it, and he described it as this about 6 foot tall, broad-shouldered, hairy bipedal thing. And the family claimed that while it would stand on 2 feet, it would often run on all fours. Over the course of this 2 or 3 week long harassment by this mystery being, at one point it even bobbed up and down, looking in the windows at Lou as she was doing dishes. Very creepy indeed. Now, the couple didn't leave the debunking up to the Air Force either. They figured this thing has got to be a gorilla. However, even barring the fact that the usual suspects, such as renegade, zoo animals or circus animals, weren't in the area, this theory is all but abolished by some of the beast's more peculiar habits, including its tendency to appear translucent. And this is hardly the only bizarre thing about the Roachdale creature. The family also stated that it was absolutely soundless when it ran away, and even though it would pass over muddy areas, it would never leave footprints. Lou's actually quoted as saying that it was like somehow it didn't touch anything. Now, most likely believing that he and his family were dealing with something a little bit more bizarre than your average gorilla, Randy even organized a small posse to try and find and capture the beast. And one of this group was actually lucky or unlucky enough to find it. He said that he saw the creature rising up out of a ditch and yelled, "Stop or I'll shoot." The thing did not abide his warning, but I guess it didn't really need to. He shot at the creature, which walked away just totally unscathed. It was like it didn't even notice getting shot. Now, the Rogers weren't the only people in the area to experience this bizarre creature. All told, about 50 other people came forward from the community to say that they had had experiences with it as well. One of the weirdest ones comes from August 14th, in which a woman, her husband, and daughter were sitting on the porch when they noticed these 2 balls of fire across the road. It became apparent that the balls of fire were actually 2 fiery eyes of some beast or creature that was watching them. Now, eventually, this one pair of eyes was joined by another one, and it's very bizarre when you read the report because the woman doesn't really make that much mention of the creatures that the eyes belong to. She simply keeps referring to these fiery, fireball-type eyes. So eventually, however, this one pair of eyes was joined by another one, and the two things continued watching the family, every now and again their attention distracted by a passing car. Now, the family went in for the night, the father and daughter went to bed, but the mother stayed up and watched these things from the relative safety of her window. She said that every now and again they would drop on all fours and feed like a dog before popping back up and still watching her. When the woman retired to bed at 3:40 in the morning, the eyes were still there. Again, very bizarre encounter. However, the highest escalation of all of this was definitely the chaos which befell the Burdine family on August 22nd. At 9 o'clock of that day, Carter Burdine and his uncle Junior returned home to discover the remains of about 60 chickens, ripped apart and scattered in a path of the utmost foul carnage imaginable. Now, bad puns aside, the chickens were actually not eaten. They were simply shredded and spread out in this about 200-foot-long path from the coop to the front of the house. Now who knows what they were really thinking, but I'm sure it was probably something along the lines of who or what could have done this terrible thing. The Burdines called the town marshal, Leroy Clonks. As they were standing around discussing the matter at hand, they heard some noise between them and the chicken coop. So the marshal got in his car and started driving on, and Junior walked behind him, not really expecting much, when all of a sudden, this thing came up out of the ditch and ran across the road about 6 feet in front of him. Junior was so shocked that he said that he didn't get a good look at it or have time to shoot. Now, here's the really bizarre thing, though, because as mentioned earlier, the Rogers claimed that the creature was absolutely soundless, of course when it wasn't pounding on the side of their house, left no tracks, and seemed to not touch its surroundings. Well, it definitely did here. Aside from absolutely trampling a fence and leaving a trail of crushed weeds and grass, Carter Burdine claims that he distinctly heard it running on 2 feet. There was also a musty odor in the area, and the Burdine's meanest dog was cowering up against the side of the porch. Apparently the other, far less mean dog was busy hiding in its pen. And while thinking the matter over, Carter remembered that the night previous, around midnight, he had heard something heavy moving on the porch. And this, unfortunately, was not the last time that the creature would call on the Burdine household. A mere couple hours later, Carter and Junior were arriving back at the farm after dropping off Carter's wife to stay with relatives while they were trying to figure out what was going on at the farm. Now, as they pulled up to the farm in the very early morning hours, they saw the creature standing in the chicken house door. They said that the creature totally blocked out the lights of the chicken house and that the doorway was about 6 by 8 feet. So that was a big creature. Again, a little bizarre considering that the Rogers claimed that it was only about 6 feet tall, when this thing was easily blocking out all of the light in that doorway. Now, the two men got a very good look at the creature and claimed that it looked like a gorilla or orangutan, had no neck, long rust-colored hair, and much like Momo, its face was absolutely obscured by the length of hair. And it made what Junior described as a groaning racket. Now, the beast ran into the barn and finally ended up jumping into a haymow. Carter and his father Herman approached the barn, while Junior went around the building, firearms at the ready. All at once, Junior yelled, "Bring me a light." By the time Carter and Herman rejoined him, he was already shooting at something across the field. He claimed that the thing was only 100 feet away and that as an avid rabbit hunter, according to reports, he knows that he shot it. Herman also joined in shooting at the monster's general direction, though he claimed he couldn't see anything. However, as is the case with many of these attempts to shoot at anomalous creatures, the monster carried on as though nothing at all was happening. Now, and this is where the weirdness kicks up again. As it's now currently apparently impervious to bullets, it's also completely soundless and leaves no tracks. What it did leave, again, was the strewn remains of 110 chickens, strangely devoid of blood. The Burdines had begun this strange tale with about 200 chickens, now they were down to 30. No trace of the creature actually remained, and cases would subside over the next week as it went off to wherever these things eventually go off to. Now, in my opinion, the parallels to the Momo case are really quite evident. Roachdale's creature was preceded by a strange luminous object in the sky. Momo's reign of smelly terror was attended by white and green fireballs. From a conventional standpoint, the appearance of aerial anomalies with mysterious creatures is a coincidence at best, but of course there comes a point where coincidence is no longer the right word. Both creatures smelled terrible, both were associated with disembodied voices, though in Momo's case they were they appeared to be human voices conveying human things such as, "I could use some of that coffee," whereas in the Roachdale case, it was simply a human-sounding voice which made that boo or ooh type noise. Both of these creatures also appeared to be far more violent than your typical gentle giant Bigfoot. Momo appearing with a blood-flecked dead dog under its arm, and the Roachdale creature apparently ushering in the demise of over 100 chickens. However, definitely the most interesting thing to me about the Roachdale beast is the seemingly transient nature that it possessed. If you look at the whole affair, it starts with luminous phenomena, and then Lou Rogers and her son Keith hear a disembodied voice. Something breathes down her neck, nothing is there. What follows then are sightings of a translucent beast that's soundless and leaves no tracks and doesn't appear to interact with the environment. However, this thing, while retaining this kind of spectral nature, also enacted physical effects. I mean, it beat on the house, it flattened a fence and brush, and of course it killed all of those chickens. To top it off, though, like some sort of phenomenological show-off, it traipsed right through gunfire on several occasions completely unscathed. It's these divergent aspects of this one thing, this same creature, that lead to an even wider scope of the question, what the heck are these things? Well, if you enjoyed this video on the bizarre translucent chicken-killing beast of Roachdale, please like, and if you're new to this field of crop circles, go ahead and subscribe to see what weirdness the future may hold. Till then, you can check out my podcast on the Paranormal UK Radio Network, also called Just Another Tinfoil Hat. New episodes every other Monday, and all past episodes available for download on Podbean. And if you want to keep up with whatever else I might possibly have going on, go ahead and check out my website, which is also called, if you can believe this, justanothertinfoilhat.com. Till then, I am Zelia Edgar, signing off.